It's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care so that you can make informed decisions, have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. In the last blog, I talked about part 3 of the 7 things families do who make informed decisions, have peace of mind, are in control, have power, and have influence whilst their loved one is critically ill in intensive care. You can check out last week's blog by clicking on the link below this video. In this week's blog, I want to share with you part 4 of this series in this blog, and also the last part of this 4-part series of the 7 things families do who make informed decisions, have peace of mind, are in control, have power, and have influence whilst their loved one is critically ill in intensive care. So welcome to another blog here at IntensiveCareHotline.com, and once again, congratulations on taking action in getting informed and taking control. Just by you doing that, you stand out from the rest of the families in intensive care, and it will give you an edge when dealing with the challenges, difficulties, and many complexities in intensive care. Our blog, as well as our Your Questions Answered series, will help you find your voice, will help you making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence very quickly in this jungle of complexities surrounding intensive care, and it will, more importantly, help you to be in control, feel powerful, and influence decision making. So, in the previous 3 episodes of this blog series, I covered the first 4 points of the 7 things families do who make informed decisions, have peace of mind, are in control, have power, and have influence whilst their loved one is critically ill in intensive care. So those points were: number 1, families of critically ill patients in intensive care are facing reality and accept reality as it is. Number 2, families of critically ill patients in intensive care are sticking together no matter what, and they are not intimidated by the intensive care team. Number 3, families of critically ill patients in intensive care are taking personal responsibility for the outcomes they want for their critically ill loved one. And number 4, families of critically ill patients in intensive care know what they want for their critically ill loved one. And by the way, you can read or watch all the 3 previous episodes of this blog post series by clicking on the links below this video. And if you are watching this on YouTube, just click on the link below this video. That'll get you to our website where you can have access to all of our other previous episodes. So today I want to focus on the last 3 points. So, number 5. Families of critically ill patients in intensive care have one spokesperson. I have hinted towards that in some of my previous points in this 4-part blog post series. I know I keep repeating myself here, and I'll say it again though. Never have many people steering the ship. Only have one captain. That doesn't mean that other people shouldn't give input into the situation, but it usually changes the dynamics in your favor if you and your family speak with one voice and have one spokesperson. To give you an example again, I have seen many situations in intensive care where the family dynamics have been difficult and challenging and made situations very difficult and challenging, especially if there are differing and competing views within a family about how the situation with your critically ill loved one in intensive care should be handled. It goes back to number 2 in this blog post, where families of critically ill patients in intensive care are sticking together no matter what. Competing interests within a family could mean that your critically ill loved one has a de facto partner and they're living together and they're not married. Your critically ill loved one also has children from a previous marriage or relationship. Both the current de facto partner and the children are claiming to be next of kin or medical power of attorney, and they both want the decision-making authority. Your critically ill loved one's de facto partner claims that they have been living together for 5 years and therefore they want to be next of kin or medical power of attorney. The children claim that the de facto partner doesn't know your loved one as well as they do, and they also urge the de facto partner that the de facto partner wouldn't act, quote unquote, in the best interest of your critically ill loved one. Just by giving you this example, you can see already how easily such an already difficult situation can get even more difficult and tricky. It doesn't serve anyone. And most importantly, it doesn't serve your loved one in intensive care. It also makes it very hard for the doctors and the nurses too, because they don't know where they stand either. If, for example, your critically ill loved one needs a procedure or surgery like a tracheostomy that they are very likely unable, that he or she is very likely unable to give consent to, your family would need to sign the documentation for consent instead. Consent is usually signed by the patient's next of kin or medical power of attorney if the patient is unable to do so, which is the case most of the time in intensive care. If the family is still fighting for kinship or medical power of attorney issues, it can delay procedures and result in significant delays and also recovery time. This is only one example out of many I could give you so that you understand why it's important that you come clear who the spokesperson and also the next of kin or medical power of attorney for your critically ill loved one is or is going to be. Once you and your family have made that decision, you mustn't change it and you should stick with it, period. The other advantage of having one spokesperson and one next of kin or medical power of attorney is that there are many situations in intensive care where people make phone inquiries about a particular patient and they claim to be a relative of the patient. Now, of course, on the phone it would be very hard to determine whether it's a relative ringing or not. If the intensive care team is unsure about the identity of the caller, they can just say they should ring the patient's next of kin in order to get information about the patient. The reality is that if the caller is really a family member, they will know what is happening and they will know who the next of kin or medical power of attorney is, and they will then get in touch with them. Number 6, families of critically ill patients in intensive care. Do not take no for an answer. Never, ever take no for an answer. I cannot tell you how many inquiries I get from clients or prospects who are telling me the intensive care team won't allow them to visit at certain times, or they tell me they won't allow them to make decisions, etc. Many scenarios look like this when families of critically ill patients in intensive care come to me. I'll give you some examples. Families of critically ill patients in intensive care are telling me the intensive care team is telling them the only option for their critically ill loved one is to stop or withdraw treatment because they have no choice of survival and it's, quote unquote, in their best interest to do so. Well, you really have to think about this long and hard before you even give an answer here. I mean, how unethical is it to say it's, quote unquote, in the best interest of a patient to let them die? Think about this. Another common scenario is that families of critically ill patients in intensive care come to me and they say, my mom, my dad, my spouse, my sibling, etc. needs a tracheostomy, and once they have a tracheostomy, they need to go on to long-term acute care. Another common scenario is that families in intensive care are asking for the medical records of their loved one in intensive care because they have lost trust and faith in the intensive care team and they're looking for answers, and the hospital is telling those families they can't have the medical records. So you may wonder, what do all of those situations have in common, and what's the answer to those challenges? First off, you can get everything you want and need for your critically ill loved one in any of the above situations if you know what to do. The fact of the matter is, if you are intimidated by the intensive care team, like 99% of the families of critically ill patients in intensive care are, you certainly won't get what you want, because you do take no for an answer. So, how can you get beyond that and get what you want in those difficult and challenging situations that I shared a minute ago? And how can you make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence? Again, do not and never take no for an answer. If you do take no for an answer, you have a big problem, and you need to change your thinking. You need to change your mindset, and you need to change your expectations very quickly. For example, if the intensive care team is telling you that the only option for your critically ill loved one is to withdraw or stop treatment because it's quote unquote in their best interest, your alarm bells need to go off. Why would the intensive care team do the unthinkable? Again, the first thing for you to say is no, and also you need to get difficult and demanding. After all, you are dealing with a life or death situation. And if you are like the 99% of the families of critically ill patients in intensive care who make no informed decisions, who have no peace of mind, no control, no power, and no influence, you will take no for an answer, and you basically become a silent witness of the intensive care team potentially killing or murdering your critically ill loved one without you taking a stand. Remember, this is life or death. Whenever the intensive care team says it's quote unquote in the best interest for your critically ill loved one, it probably means it's in the best interest of them. Why? I'm really glad you've asked. The reality and the fact of the matter is that intensive care teams' interests are going way beyond your critically ill loved one's diagnosis, their prognosis, as well as their care and their treatment. So how do I know? I know it because I have seen it all in nearly 20 years intensive care nursing experience in 3 different countries, where I literally worked with thousands of critically ill patients and their families. I have also worked as a nurse unit manager for over 5 years before starting my own one-on-one practice consultancy and advocacy for families in intensive care here at intensivecarehotline.com, where I speak to and consult families in intensive care 7 days a week all over the world. The issues and challenges families in intensive care are dealing with are the same all over the world. The minute you and your family take no for an answer, the intensive care team will walk all over you. Do not copy the behavior of the 99% of the families of critically ill patients in intensive care who don't make informed decisions, who don't get peace of mind, don't get control, don't get power, and never will get influence. You don't want to be that person. Get yourself in the right mindset and get yourself mentally strong and prepared so you can actually make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence. Therefore, do not take no for an answer, especially not in a life or death situation. The same applies when it comes to trying to force you and your family to agree to a tracheostomy and then sending your loved one off to long-term acute care, also known as LTAC. You really need to ask better questions in order to make sure your loved one isn't going to have a tracheostomy to begin with. If your loved one gets sent to LTAC, they are doomed. LTACs have, generally speaking, very low care standards, and they're usually not qualified to look after tracheostomies and ventilation. We hear shocking stories from LTAC every single day of the week. Whenever there is talk about a tracheostomy for your loved one, you need to make sure they have maximized all chances to get your loved one off the ventilator and the breathing tube or the endotracheal tube in the first place. How? Well, I've written an article and made a video about how to wean a critically ill patient in intensive care off the ventilator and the breathing tube. And you can follow those guidelines in there. So I put a link to this article and video, how to wean a critically ill patient in intensive care off the ventilator and the breathing tube, below this video in the written version of this blog. Go and click on the link there. The fact of the matter is that as long as the intensive care team hasn't maximized the chances and efforts to get your loved one off the ventilator, there shouldn't be any talk about a tracheostomy and LTAC. Only ask for, demand, and expect the very best, and get yourself informed by a professional, period. If, for whatever reason, the intensive care unit won't release the medical records for your critically ill loved one, you should immediately get suspicious that they're having something to hide or that they're trying something to hide. As a matter of fact, you have the right to access the medical records at any given time due to Freedom of Information Acts. So whatever BS excuse the hospital or the intensive care unit is making for not releasing the medical records is probably just delay tactics. Therefore, do not take no for an answer and ask for the medical records with a deadline, and you will get them as long as you don't take no for an answer. If you do take no for an answer, chances are that you belong to the 99% of families of critically ill patients in intensive care who don't make informed decisions, who will never get peace of mind, who will never have control, power, or influence, period. Given that you are here, I trust that you move out of the 99% circle into the 1% bracket of families in intensive care very quickly. And if you have watched thus far, I highly recommend you check out the options for my one-on-one phone and email counseling and consulting. You can click on the link on the top of the website, and that'll get you to the one-on-one consulting and advocacy options, and you can choose from the option that works best for you. Let's move on to number 7. Families of critically ill patients in intensive care have high expectations of themselves and of the intensive care team. Again, even though I might sound like a broken record, 99% of families of critically ill patients in intensive care who don't make informed decisions, who don't get peace of mind, who don't have control, power, or influence, will never be in a position to get what they want. The 1% of families of critically ill patients in intensive care who make informed decisions, who have peace of mind, control, power, and influence really get it. They have high expectations of themselves and their ability to manage and influence the intensive care team so that their critically ill loved one will get the best possible care and treatment without fail. The 1% of families in intensive care who do make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence, have high expectations. The reality is that feeling sorry for yourself is not going to cut it. I know it's easier said than done, but often rolling up your sleeves and doing what needs to be done is the only thing that helps. Do your own research. Start managing the intensive care team so they won't manage you is what needs to be done. Show to them that you have high expectations of them and yourself. And most of all, hire a professional consultant and advocate like myself here at intensivecarehotline.com who can help you make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence. So, how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one? How can you make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power, and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? you will get to that all-important feeling of making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence when you download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you will learn quickly how to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free instant impact report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you will learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what is really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests, how to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle, and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You will get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence in your situation. You will get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You will get crucial behind-the-scenes insight so that you know and understand what is really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's blog, and I will see you again next week in another update. Make sure you also have a look at our Your Questions Answered section, where I answer your questions, or simply send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions, or you can call me, find international phone numbers on our contacts tab. Also, check out our ebook section, where you get more ebooks, videos and audio recordings, and where you can also get one-on-one counseling, consulting and advocacy with me via Skype, over the phone and via email by clicking on the email and phone consulting tabs on the top of the website. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll see you again next week in another update.